Good evening. Welcome, everybody. I'm Thomas Haydu from Cornwall Community Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us for this very interesting evening. We are very grateful to our speakers for talking to us this evening. We will hear from Henry Meacock, CEO of St. Petrocs, Jacqui White MBE, founder of Wadebridge Foodbank, and Simon Ryan from Seas Cornwall. Many thanks to Susie Croft, our philanthropy director, for organizing the event, and to all in our wonderful team who helped Susie. We will start with a short introduction about the work of the CCF, followed by a brief summary of the key findings from our vital signs research, and Sophie, our programs director, will talk about the new Housing Action Appeal. In the main part of the event, you will hear from our expert speakers about the fantastic work they do to help people in need. We are planning to finish at 7:45, including time for questions at the end. Please use the quick Q&A section at the bottom of your screen to write any questions you have, which we can answer later. Please don't use the chat function, as we don't want to lose your questions. The online event is recorded and it will be shared, but our participants won't be visible. It is wonderful to see how many of you joined us this evening. We have 100 people on this call, and we are grateful to all who support us. We are dedicated to making Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly a better place for all, and we have been doing this for 22 years. Since the foundation was set up in 2003, we have distributed more than £22 million. Last year alone, we distributed £3.2 million to 675 projects, which is more than the National Lottery distributed in Cornwall last year. The majority of our funding comes from private individuals and local businesses, but we receive large amounts of money from Devon and Cornwall Police, Cornwall Council, and the NHS Integrated Care Board, as they recognise the difference that small grassroots organisations make in their local communities. We work with wonderful funders such as the Duke of Cornwall's Benevolent Fund, the Sarah Collins Foundation, the Caledonia Investment Charitable Foundation, and the Clare Milne Trust. No one charity can possibly tackle all the issues Cornwall is facing. As a grant-awarding charity, we connect generous people who would like to help people in Cornwall, and we connect them to local projects that are making a real difference. We support small grassroots organizations that are embedded in their communities. You probably haven't heard of half of the organizations we support, small groups without any marketing or fundraising departments. We support the food banks in Cornwall, community halls, sports and youth clubs, organizations who help people with disability, their mental health, or victims of violence. Our grants officers are experts in their field and can tell if any application is viable and achievable. We are not just a grant funder. We are also a mine of local knowledge. Knowledge about the local needs and the projects that help people in need. We employ a full-time community outreach officer to meet new projects in some of Cornwall's most deprived neighbourhoods. It is very important for us to get into the heart of our communities. We support them with their applications, as many of them haven't got any experience in writing applications. We help them get application ready, meaning they can apply to other funders with more likelihood of success. As a grant funder, it is very important for us to understand the changing needs, and this is why we carried out our vital signs researches. This is our third vital signs research, and I would like to thank Vice Lord Lieutenant James Williams for covering the costs of the research and the publications for the third time. James is a former chair of the Community Foundation and still our vice president. The research highlights the challenges that our communities face and how local giving can make a huge difference by addressing the urgent and often overlooked areas of need. We worked in partnership with the University of Exeter to collect all the available data, and we will present the findings under 8 themes. We carried out a survey amongst our grant recipients with 371 responses received. We also had 3 community consultations in Penzance, Bodmin, and Millbrook. We wanted to make sure that we cover coastal areas, also an inland area, as well as a rurally isolated part of Cornwall. The consultations brought together residents, representatives of the community, including businesses, the council, schools, health professionals, and those working across some of the groups the CCF supports. This is the third time we have carried out the research. The 2017 research highlighted poverty, rural isolation, and lack of opportunities as the key issues. In the 2022 research, these were joined by lack of affordable housing and the increasing impact of climate change. Our new research revealed that the COVID pandemic and the cost of living crisis have affected mental health with long waiting lists for assessments and support. Fortunately, Cornwall has a vibrant voluntary sector providing vital help for our local communities, and we always celebrate wonderful projects in this Vital Signs report who are already making a significant difference. So let's look at some of the key findings to give you an idea of the challenges that people in Cornwall are facing. 20% of the employees in Cornwall earned less than the real living wage last year, compared to 16% across the United Kingdom. 35% of part-time jobs paid below the real living wage versus 13% of full-time jobs. And this is bad news for Cornwall, as unfortunately, part-time work accounts for over 37% of jobs in Cornwall. Unfortunately, 1 in 3 children lives in poverty in Cornwall after taking housing costs into account. 1 in 3 secondary school pupils are missing out on 10% of their lessons, mainly due to mental health reasons. There is a 3-year waiting list for children's autism assessment and 11-year waiting list for adults. And during this time, they don't receive much statutory support. They purely rely on help from community organizations, charities, and community groups. Let me share with you some of the key findings from the housing and homelessness theme. The average home costs 8.8 times of the average earnings in Cornwall, compared to 7.5 times in England. While earnings have doubled since 1997, house prices have more than quadrupled. More than 21,000 households are on the social and affordable housing register. This has increased by 130% over the last 5 years. The reason for this is not the high level of second home. There is a lack of social housing in Cornwall. Social rented properties represented 13% in Cornwall, compared to 17% in England. So there is a real lack in social housing. The average monthly rent in Cornwall was £957 as of April 2025. A year ago, it was £880, which is an 8.4% increase in a year. And the £950 is very much just an average, with significant variations across Cornwall. The pandemic exacerbated an already difficult affordable housing situation in Cornwall. A lot of privately rented properties were converted into Airbnbs, pushing tenants out from popular coastal areas. And at the same time, we have 2,652 long-term empty properties in Cornwall. We will publish our vital signs next month, and it will inform us and our fund holders about the need in Cornwall. It is clear that housing and homelessness remains one of the key issues, and I would like to introduce Sophie, our programs director, who will talk further about what we have been doing about addressing homelessness and providing homes for local people.
Thank you so much, Tamas. So at Cornwall Community Foundation, we've been supporting housing and homelessness issues for the last 22 years. However, as the housing crisis continues to worsen here in Cornwall, we knew that we had to think more ambitiously in order to help the sector to tackle this issue, which is compounding other issues that we seek to address here at CCF, such as poverty, rural isolation, and health disparities. So over the last year, we've been working with local housing and homelessness organisations to understand their challenges and their funding needs. And from this expertise, we've developed a new fund that aims to support the voluntary sector to meet the increasing demand for their services. Many of the groups we support have seen demand of homelessness support double since the start of the pandemic. And meanwhile, nearly 40% of those groups have seen their funding stagnate or decrease over that period. So frontline groups are having to do more and more to help people in crisis with increasingly complex needs while their resources are dwindling. So it's no surprise that many of these groups are experiencing issues of staff or volunteer burnout. However, these groups are instrumental in helping people to move on from homelessness. They offer a real lifeline when people are in urgent need, as well as helping to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. These organisations are often made up of volunteers, offering support, connection and hope to people that are sometimes and often in desperate circumstances. These volunteers really are Cornwall's unsung heroes. So this fund aims to ensure that these groups can continue to be there, helping to prevent homelessness and moving people on as quickly as possible to more stable housing and creating brighter prospects for the future. And we also must address the issues that the funding landscape itself is causing to these key voluntary organisations. So around a third of charity resources are spent on fundraising applications and reporting, as well as creating that perpetual cycle of chasing short-term funds that just don't offer enough flexibility for groups to really achieve systemic change. So if we can move to a more flexible funding model, provided unrestricted and multi-year funding, we can enable these expert groups on the front lines to just get on with what they do best and provide more capacity for strategic planning and collaborative working towards systemic change so that we really can end homelessness in Cornwall for good. So in addition to funding for homelessness charities, we also want to increase the number of affordable homes for local people. As Tamas highlighted, the shortage of affordable homes is a major factor behind many of the challenges that Cornwall faces today. So that's why we're launching this new initiative to support community-led housing projects with seed funding to help get them off the ground. And this includes backing groups like Community Land Trusts and 3Seas, who are here with us today, with early stage funding to create affordable homes that are owned by and for the local community, ensuring they remain protected from being sold for profit. And over the years, this will deliver hundreds of new, affordable, community-owned homes developed by local people for local people. The fund will provide early-stage financial support to help these community groups get their housing plans from the drawing board and into reality. So I now have the pleasure of introducing our three keynote speakers that we've supported and worked with for many years to give a flavour of the issues that these frontline groups are facing across Cornwall. And firstly, I'd like to introduce Henry Meacock, CEO of St Petrocs, one of Cornwall's leading charities working to end homelessness across the county. So over to you, Henry.
Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Tamas, and all the team at the Cornwall Community Foundation. We're extremely grateful to be the recipient of funding over the last few years, and it's really nice for us to talk to your supporters this evening. So my name's Henry Meacock. It's my privilege to be the Chief Executive of St Petrocs. What I'm going to do this evening is talk a little bit about the work of the charity, but I don't want to take up too much time because I have to my left Max Hedges, who is a former resident of St Petrocs, and Max has kindly agreed to share his experience of St Petrocs and then a bit about where he's moved on to. But to put this in context and the housing crisis in Cornwall, St Petrocs is nearly 40 years old now. Next year we will mark our 40th anniversary. And we've grown over those years to face the demand that is thrown at us. In terms of the numbers of people we work with, last year in 2024, we worked with 1,402 people, which I just find an extraordinary number in Cornwall, the vast majority of whom have a close connection to Cornwall. I'm really pleased to say that on 537 occasions last year, we ended people's homelessness, and that's a real achievement. And not only do we end homelessness, we also prevent it wherever we can. And yeah, 183 people were prevented from rough sleeping because of the work of St Petrocs. So we have a range of services, both residential and non-residential. Our aim is across 4 main strategic objectives. And the first objective we have to have is around preventing homelessness. And we will work and do whatever we can to prevent somebody from having to experience rough sleeping. And I've put in the slide deck, the next slide talks a little bit about the theory of prevention. And this is where I think Cornwall Community Foundation, in creating this housing fund, are looking to the future really well. There are 5 stages of homelessness prevention, and the work of St Petrocs is really done at that sort of crisis point. And we work with people in crisis, we work with people in emergency situations. And much of our work is around ensuring that when people do experience homelessness, it is not a repeated situation, but really through the proactive work of the Community Foundation, looking at housing supply more generally, it will help other organisations and organisations like ourselves tackle prevention more upstream. So another strategic objective of the organisation St Petrocs is where we are unable to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. It is really important that we make the experience of homelessness as short as possible. It's so really detrimental for anyone to spend any amount of time outside. It's crucial that we make it as short as possible. And part of the work we do is around, especially over the winter time, offering emergency accommodation. And the next slide talks a little bit more about the impact we had. And I'm really pleased to say over the last winter, we provided emergency accommodation for 107 people. And 91% of those people did not return to rough sleeping after. That's the impact that the organisation can have. We offer, it's more than just a roof over somebody's head. It's around the support and opportunity that we try to provide people when they come into our accommodation. The third strategic priority is around, and this is a really important one, supporting people away from homelessness for good. So it's about connecting people with opportunities to make sure that their experiences of homelessness is not repeated. And when they move on successfully, like Max has done, they do not return to homelessness. And finally, in terms of our objectives, it's really important that we make homelessness an exception in our society. Homelessness is a societal issue, and we can't just allow it to happen. We can come together as a society and make different choices. And it is possible to see a future for Cornwall without homelessness being a significant issue. And I know I've rattled through my slides, but it's really important that you hear directly from Max as somebody who's experiences some Petrocs services. And I'd like to, very pleased to be able to hand over to you, Max, to share your experience.
Thank you, Henry. My name's Max. It's good to be here. I feel extremely emotional, and I'm very moved by the slides that I was watching and just being here, because I couldn't help but reflect on my experience before coming into St Petrocs and also now having gone through the services. As I said, I feel very emotional, so bear with me if I do shed a tear or two, because it's been a long old road, you know, but it was made a lot easier through coming to St Petrocs, and I was just looking through those slides, and I could see people on there that were in photos with other people that I'd shared experiences similar of. Well, what I mean by that is that I could see myself in those photos, sat with those workers that those people were that you saw before. Before I came into St Petrocs, my life was destroyed, or at least I thought it was. I couldn't see a way out of how I was living my life. It was hope. I think the word hope was mentioned before. I'd lost hope, but what I found was I found hope in other people, and I was able to sort of just slowly see a way to live some life of normality. I joined St Petrocs on the 21st of February 2022, and I remember that date very clearly because it's a very important date to me. It's a date of which I finished at the end of an 18-week rehabilitation centre, one local to me in the area. And on that day, I remember coming out of that place, and I remember being driven to a St. Petrocs house. Actually, prior to that, I remember being in a situation where I had nowhere safe to go. I'd come at the end of my time. And I remember being in a position of crisis where I had nowhere safe to come when I was leaving that centre. And a few phone calls were made, and I was whipped down to Penzance, to one of the drop-in centres that's readily available for many people. And I turned up to that drop-in centre, and I was welcomed by a gentleman called Mark, who's a good friend of mine now, who I saw recently as I came back from doing a course that was provided by St. Petrocs, and was able to share a nice moment with him, a moment of normality, getting off a train and shaking a man's hand, present and in society, was something that was a million miles away from me. But I went down to that drop-in centre, and that was the start of the ball rolling of my life changing, and as I say, seeing a way of living some form of normality, which I was not used to. I was then signposted to one of the St. Petrocs houses, of which within 4 days of me, I think it was 4 days before I left the rehabilitation centre, I'd found a property. Very fortunate, very lucky, and I was driven to that place afterwards. And I remember turning up to that place with multiple pieces of paper and pieces of tissue with phone numbers on, and I remember just thinking, you know, this is it. This is where I'm at. And from that day, I received nothing but support and love from these people, you know. And I can talk about my experience as someone that sat and had conversations with staff members. You know, you can hear from Henry, and you know, he can tell you, you know, about the organisation. You know, I know Henry well. I've met for coffee with Henry. We've done other events. You know, and it's not. I've never felt separate or apart from these people, even if within myself I felt that. You know, I found I was challenged when I came to St. Petrocs. You know, but I was the responsibility was always put back on myself. You know, and that instilled in me, you know, a process of knowing that I need to take action. But like I say, before I came to St. Petrocs, or I should say when I arrived at St. Petrocs, I came with a bag of clothes, multiple bags of clothes. Now I work 2 jobs. You know, I have a fully self-supporting house. I'm currently off benefits. I don't want to sound like a big head, but I run ultra marathons. You know, and the only time you would get me running is when I knew the off license was shut in. You know, that would be the only motion of movement within these legs, would be if I was in a position of crisis. Funny enough, I put myself back in those situations, but differently, and I enjoy being in the stream of life today. But my life has transformed. You know, there was various things that I was helped out with like laptops and things like that, to help with looking for work, and multiple courses that I've been put on as well to sort of further develop, and that sort of process of being given those opportunities and then taking that action has allowed me to continue that as I've left, you know, and I continue to take action. And I'm grateful for St. Petrocs for helping me to see that there is a way to live life past a crisis or whatever it's been experienced. And I say this for myself, but I also know other members of other houses that are doing well. You know, and I won't mention names because it's not my place to, but I know that the impact of this far exceeds what I'm saying to you right now, and I've experienced that, and I'm grateful. So yeah, all I've got to say really is that, you know, I know what goes on inside these houses, and I've seen the change in other people, you know, and I see these people, and I know these people from past lives, and I see them walking a different way of living, and your money impacts and has tremendous and provides tremendous opportunities for people like myself that had nothing, and now I'm starting to be in the stream of life, which I'm grateful for. So it's good to be here. It's good to talk to you all, and I think I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Max. Really appreciate you joining and sharing your experience. And yeah, we'll pass back to you, Sophie.
Great. Oh, thank you so much, Max. It's just so fantastic to hear your story, and so great to hear how well you're doing. And the ultra marathons are so inspiring. I know that's really difficult to share your own story, so thank you so much. And also thank you, Henry. It's really powerful to have your summary that homelessness is a human rights issue that we really do have the power to end in Cornwall, thanks to groups such as yourselves. So thanks so much for everything you've shared today. And next up, I'd like to introduce Jacqui White MBE, founder of Wadebridge Foodbank, who's doing fantastic work with communities in the Wadebridge area and beyond. So over to you, Jacqui.
Thank you. Max, you did a fantastic presentation. Well done. Right. My name is Jacqui White and I'm project manager of Wadebridge Foodbank and Storehouse. Our area is Bodmin, Camelford, St Minver, Padstow, Wadebridge and all the surrounding rural areas. And everyone that comes to us is referred by a professional agency. Our main hub is in Wadebridge, where we also have a shop where we sell furniture and household goods to the public. But if clients are referred to us as in need, we also give it away. We've been open for 16 years and I have seen a significant increase in people needing our services. But we're not just a food bank, we offer much more than food. And can you put up the next slide for me on the web? That's the one. So these are some of the services that we offer. So apart from food, we do a lot of work with our clients on an individual basis. They come to us for a food box, but during a chat, we often hear about multiple problems and how they're overwhelmed with such amazingly complex situations. We offer a listening ear and with numerous things such as PIP applications, pension credit checks, budgeting, benefit checks, housing applications, help with completing online forms, referrals into some Petrocs sometimes. CAB work with us in Wadebridge and Bodmin every week, and clients with debt problems are referred to us, and we refer them on to Christians Against Poverty. So we're working with most of the major agencies around the area. We're offering lots more than just food. But our stats are showing that the 24-25 stats show a 10.3% increase in our referrals are for people insecurely housed. And that's a huge increase on previous years. Plus, there's a big rise in the no fixed abode and rough sleepers. So on average, we have about 23% of the people that are referred into us have housing problems of some degree. And we had a video for a young lady and talking about her situation with her partner and with a young baby. So I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to show this or not. May or may not be able to show, but I will give you a rough idea. No, we haven't got the sound, unfortunately, so I will just sort of talk you through most of this. So this was a young couple, both of whom were working. Mum is on maternity leave and they became homeless or facing homelessness because of her grandparents. They were living with the grandparents, but the grandfather had a heart attack and the grandparents said they couldn't really keep them any longer. So they had to apply to Cornwall Housing to see if they could find some housing. And as it says there, they had to send documents. Mum and granddad, mum and dad had to say that they were becoming homeless for a real reason, but they weren't actually going to be offered anything. And then on the day, their baby was 2 months old and they were offered a place in a travel lodge in Roach. Now, the husband or the partner is working full-time and he was working in Bodmin. So they're trying to get travel backwards and forwards from Roach to Bodmin all the time. And this is about when she was trying to go to the health visitor, to the midwife, and she broke down. It's an emotional time. And she was feeling really low. And then she came to us. And she just revealed a really complex situation of what was going on and how she felt and how hopeless it all felt. And then she was saying about the fact they can't cook for their baby, they couldn't cook for themselves, they couldn't do very much actually. They're just in this travel lodge in one room with a 2-month-old baby, and they'd been there for weeks. They actually were given a place. They said, can you give it to they were given a place in Bodmin, and they said that they had to arrive there. They did. It was a private rental, but the council were having it as a temporary accommodation. And then when they got there, there was blood up the walls and there was drug paraphernalia everywhere. And her partner said, we can't stay here. This is too much. So they got the mother-in-law to come and collect them. And she said, you cannot stay here. You've got a 2-month-old baby. This is no good. So they phoned the council and said, please, can they come and stay with mother-in-law for the weekend until such time as they could find something else. Then they were sent back again to Roach, to the travel lodge. Again, one room, only a kettle. They could only heat up water. They couldn't cook anything, any hot meals. And they were left there for another couple of weeks. After that, they were moved into another place, which was in St Austell, and they were given a flat. Again, mother-in-law trying to help, took them to this flat. They unloaded all their stuff at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, were very excited. She was explaining how she had video called her mother and said, look, we've got this flat, it'll be amazing, we'll make it home, it'll be lovely. And by 5 o'clock, they got a text message from the council to say, I'm sorry, you can't stay there. The fire checks haven't been done. You'll have to move out again. So they had to pack all their things up again on the same day that they moved in, and they went back to yet another travel lodge. And this is how life was carrying on. Eventually, they came to see us at the food bank. She saw Victoria. We were trying to have a look at all of whatever we could help with and said, you can't be staying here too much longer. Their banding was wrong that they'd been given so that they could actually apply for a flat. So we tried to sort a lot of those things out. And then they were offered, in the end, have been offered temporary accommodation at a flat in Bodmin, which they are now in. Not a great flat, but they've made it really nice. And so now they have, their baby is 8 months old and she can cook and she has got the facilities, but this is only temporary. They're not allowed to stay there. And now they have been homeless for more than 56 days, they can start bidding for a flat somewhere. So this is a young man who is working, has been moving around and trying to keep his job when he doesn't drive. So they've had to be paying for taxis when they're moved out of their area and back again. She is also on maternity leave, so she works as well. So she's going to have to go back to work very soon. And they are now bidding for a property, hopefully in Bodmin, because that's where they both work. But when they do that, that won't be the end of all their problems, unfortunately. So when they get their property, they're going to have to find a month's rent to put down as a deposit for the tenancy. And also when they move into council property, they will have taken up all of the carpets and the flooring. So they've got an 8-month-old baby that's going to be crawling around on bare floors until they can find some money to put some flooring down. But they are quite upbeat about it now. This has been a terribly emotional time. They're young parents, they're first-time parents, and they have had all the emotions thrown at them when you're just trying to get your head around having a new baby. But Tessa said to us off camera that she came to the food bank feeling really guilty and feeling a lot of shame, but she was grateful for the chat and she felt listened to and left feeling validated. So that was really good for us to hear, that she felt listened to, and that's an important thing. Sometimes we can't do too much for people, but we can listen. So we will keep in touch, and we will try to help them with their furniture for their new home when they're settled. So I'm looking back, and I'm the youngest of 4 children, and I'm a kid off a council estate in Essex. And we had a nice house, and it never occurred to us that our family, that we would not have a secure long-term home. Unfortunately, that can't be said for many, many people in Cornwall today. So we see people struggling every day. We're making more and more kettle boxes for people with no cooking facilities. We're seeing more and more homeless people or people with housing problems coming through our door every day. We're a rural area and we desperately need more secure rented accommodation. So this is a story that becomes a rare occurrence and not something we hear about all the time. So thank you to Cornwall Community Foundation and to your donors, and for trying to help tackle this huge problem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacqui. I mean, what professional you are to carry on even through the tech issues. I really, really appreciate that. And it's so great to hear your stories and stories.
I'm sure I might have missed lots out, but hey, hopefully you got a flavour of it. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. And finally, we'd like to hand over to Simon Ryan from 3 Seas, who's one of the many groups across Cornwall who are part of this movement for community-led housing. So over to you, Simon.
Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Tamas, for that introduction. I'm sorry you can't see me. It's no great loss, but I'm half up a mountain in Spain, talking to you down a very small cable that eventually reaches the city. Hopefully the sound's okay. You hearing me all right at the moment?
Sounds great, Simon.
Okay, so no video, but you've got sound, that's something. Okay, so I'm the manager of 3 Seas. It's a new organisation. We're coming at this question from the other end from your previous 2 speakers. Our thing is about where is that housing coming from? And our particular slant on it is from communities. That's why the Community Foundation matters so much to what we're doing. I was involved with a group called the Peninsula Trust before I started this one, before we started this one. And I very rarely get the chance to say to donors, to supporters, about just how great Cornwall Community Foundation is. It's a thing that doesn't get said often enough. When I was with Peninsula Trust, it was the foundation that helped us get through COVID. It was the foundation that made a load of things happen because you lot are fast, you understand what's going on, you actually know who's involved and who's working well, and you're there for us. It's terrific, and to everybody who's supporting the foundation, well done. You're doing the right thing. It's an amazing organisation, and thank you all very much. Okay, now 3 Seas Cornwall. We are a multidisciplinary operation. You'll see in a minute where we started from. We have architects, surveyors, all kinds of professionals. We have good finance people and fundraisers. Green energy fiends, that is not a typo. Our green energy guy is completely fanatical and wonderful and believes we can do 0% costs on refurbs, which isn't true, but whatever, it's all good, it's all good. We're community organisers. Our whole organisation came out of community development, not directly out of housing. So we come from the same background that the previous 2 speakers come from, but we're just working the other way around. We're working from the other end. We're heritage enthusiasts. The properties we're getting offered are mostly heritage or at least historical value. They're old and they're tired. What we've got here is an idea for new housing, which is working. And I'm going to talk you through a couple of ideas. This is a genuine addition to all the other great work going on around housing. And we're on to something. This one, Coast Guard cottages, this was Peninsula Trust, my previous job. Cornwall Council, to their eternal credit, gave us the chance to buy 3 of those cottages. They'd been empty for many years. They were in a terrible state. They were going to go to auction. We stepped in, please, can we have a go? We bought them at social housing rental. I'll say that again, at social housing valuation. We raised money from government. I'll come back to that. and we got those 3 families moved in. Okay, now the guy on the left there, on the right there, is a window cleaner. He said on camera, this is better than the lottery, because the lottery won't necessarily get you a house. The key thing that matters to those families and to us is that these houses are decent, tick, they are secure. People can keep those houses as long as they keep paying the rent and as long as they keep the parties down. It's a real opportunity for them to move on in their lives. So that's where we started from. The next slide shows you where we're at now. Here we are in Looe. Beautiful, beautiful heritage terrace overlooking the town. This is the Coast Guard flats, was Coast Guard houses. Everything to the left of the 2 white doors you see there, those are private ownership. Everything to the left constitutes 11 flats. We've got a deal with Cornwall Council. We're getting the whole block for £1. We had a lot of publicity about this a little while ago. Of course, it's a commitment for slightly more than £1, 2 million quid. We're pretty much there. We're pretty much done. There's some extra money to be sought for some extensions to the green energy stuff, but by and large, it's done. That's 11 small flats at social rents or slightly above in a town where there's simply no rented accommodation available. Not a question of can we afford it, there is nothing. So people either leave or they stay stuck with their families indefinitely, or they go homeless. So our approach to the people that you've heard in the previous 2 speakers' parts is, what can we do about it? Where are the houses? Now, we've got this, we've made it work. There's 11 small homes. They are tiny flats. They'll mostly be 18-year-olds moving out of home for the first time into rental they can genuinely afford. These are the bar staff, the care workers, the petrol pump attendants of Looe. It's actually got an important impact on the local economy because businesses can't find staff in those towns. It's a real deal. We're hoping it's not sorted yet. We're hoping to start on site in September. That's where we're at. The next one now is, first of all, this is Marie, born and bred in Looe. That's her restaurant. We came to the people of Looe and we said, what about it? And the response was astonishing. It really works, okay? Building local support, meeting social media, events, talking to people in the town is huge. It's what we're about as an organisation. It's critical that we take communities with us. We won't get funded, but also we won't get the support we need. How it works is we raise money, we pay proper professionals. This is not being done on the cheap. We're paying proper rates to architects, surveyors, BAT people, the whole works. It's a complicated process. The other element that we've got that I think is a little different is the community shares thing. We are empowered to take private investment from individuals from £100 upwards, who then become genuine part owners of those homes. It's not a symbolic action. You actually get a share in the housing and you get to say what happens to the housing in the future. It's a big deal. We know it works. In Looe, we raised £250,000 from 315 people, including 4 young people who paid us £10 a month because they couldn't afford 100 quid, up to a guy who gave us £40,000. The thing works. It empowers, it engages, it excites communities. They believe stuff can be done. It's great. Now, moving towards why hey, we'll jump back. I've got one more line there. Jump back. Go on. Now, capital grants and loans. This is key. Capital grants and loans are readily available. Okay. The Cornwall Council that cannot look after their old, decrepit housing can grant aid us to look after it because there's money in the community side. Right? So the whole thing fits together. It does work. Okay. Now jump forward for me. There. Thank you. Downderry Village, lovely village, very, very tourism orientated, holiday orientated. There you see an aerial shot smack in the middle of the village. The red roofed houses are some very poor old holiday chalets owned by a local family who will not sell to a developer. They will not sell to the council, but they'll sell to us because they trust us, because they believe, thanks to Corsan, thanks to Looe, thanks to meetings in the village, that we're going to do what we promise. We're going to pull those down. We're going to build 22 1 and 2 beds. That project there will clear the backlog of housing need in that village at that scale. Not family homes, but the small ones. We will clear the backlog. That's a great project. That is a great achievement. The family have been offered £1 million for that site. It will take 3 to 4 very large luxury homes. They've said no. They're giving it to us for 460,000. That's a win. That is such a win. And I'm just enormously complimented that people are believing in us to the extent they'll take the money they need and they'll lose the rest of it. It's a great thing. It's happening. It's running now. The feasibility completes, the study, the design completes in July. We should be on site there beginning part of next year. We're not sure yet. That's a real good one. What else you got for me? Now, the choke point. So the spending review came out yesterday. Most people will have seen something on the news. Housing has been very heavily supported by the government spending review. It's great news across the sector. The choke point, unfortunately, remains. Here's the situation. Community support is key. We're good at that. We're loud. We all live in villages ourselves. We're local to it. We're making it work. Capital grants, the bigger grants, are relatively easy to get and will now be easier thanks to spending review. Our operation, our belief, our ability and our track record means that we attract funding for the capital build from all sorts of people. Lottery, councils, all kinds, that's good. Loan finance is fine. We've got an undeniably secure income stream for the next, what do you want to say, next 125 years? We are not going to struggle to find tenants who are keen to pay us rent, right? So we will borrow prudently against the rental income. Where we struggle is where we woke up when the foundation said to us about this new process, because the problem is we can't make the first moves, all right? The examples I showed you just now, all three, Corsand, Loo and Downderry, were all funded in this initial primary stage by Cornwall Council from a feasibility fund which they had, which is now gone. There's no money left. We've got 4 more projects which we could start, but we need a chunk of money for the initial work, architect, surveyor, do the finances, ensure that the thing is in fact viable. We stopped calling it feasibility because by the time we get to these, we know they're achievable. We just don't have a way to pay all those costs, all those professionals. That's the choke point. We're talking somewhere between £30,000 and £50,000 for one of these projects. A lot of money, but that's the bit that's blocking us. If we get it from somewhere, we'll unlock low millions on these projects and we will build the housing. It's extraordinarily simple. The whole equation works apart from this point. And then I got an email from Cornwall Community Foundation. We want to talk to you about choke point, about what's not working. Hey, that's why I'm here talking to you from the mountains of northern Spain, even though you can't see me, because this really matters. This is a really big deal. Thank you. Show me one more. Go on. People say to me, I do public meetings, but is it too good to be true? It is not. It is true, not just because we've run the figures we know. We've done it. We did it in Corsand. We know that it actually works. We're not beginners and we're not fantasists. We've done it recently. The opportunity here is alarmingly large, okay? Tamas showed you the slide with over 2,000 empty long-term houses. A good chunk of those, regrettably, are council owned. That's quite wrong. The council themselves admit it. They have enormous problems. They don't have the resource. They don't have the cash. They don't have the skills to rebuild grade 2 listed 200-year-old houses with no foundations and terrible EPC. We do. We can do that stuff. We've got a model and it works. We're bringing people together. We're making it happen. We are building homes now. Goodness sakes, we want to see work closer with those last 2 speakers and ensure that the people coming to them come to us and get something sorted. There you are. How's that? Thanks very much for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Simon. That was amazing, absolutely, to have an insight into how we could unlock more long-term affordable accommodation for local people. And a huge thanks to all of our speakers, Simon, Jacqui, Henry, and Max. Max, you are a real inspiration. Thank you for joining us this evening. With such an enormous and complex issues, clearly no one organization can possibly tackle it, or there are no quick fixes to this issue. Our housing appeal focuses on the long-term systematic change, as well as dealing with consequences of the crisis in the here and now. Our aim is to raise £3 million over 3 years to support these wonderful groups and similar organizations. And we have a great news to share with you, as we reached our first £100,000 thanks to private donors and thanks to a large donation from the Duke of Cornwall's charitable foundation. With your help, we can remove barriers that prevent communities from creating their own housing solutions, similar to Cosand and Kingsand, and also organizations. We can support organizations who are helping people in immediate crisis of being homelessness, people who experienced it similar to Max. So we hope that you will support the appeal, and you can see a QR code on the screen. Please scan that, and it will take you to a page where you can find more information and you can make a donation. Alternatively, if you go onto our website, on our homepage, on the top right corner, you will see the link to the appeal where you can make a donation to support these wonderful organizations. And this is not the end of the evening yet, as we received several questions. Thank you so much for the questions, and we will pass it on to our expert speakers. So the first one, thank you, Catherine, is actually not a question, but thank you, Max, for sharing your story. Catherine is so glad that, and she's not alone, that you have been supported and this has changed your life. What an inspirational young man, said Catherine, and I can only echo that. Oh. Our next question, thank you very much, Angie, for the very good question. Can any deals be done around change of use for some of the empty retail spaces on Cornish high streets to provide opportunities for homes for local folk? That's a very good question. I think walking in any town or all the towns on the high streets, you can see these empty flats above retail spaces. I think, Simon, you would be the best person to answer this question. Can you see opportunities to change use for some of these empty retail spaces?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Thomas. There's 3 ways forward on this. One is a governmental and policy one, which is kind of moving a policy change which permits easier change of use planning permission, even if it were to be temporary. That would be something. But the high street has changed. It seems easy and clear that there is no longer a need for so many retail spaces. Once they go empty and derelict, the town centres look terrible. What about accepting the change? A second problem is that quite a lot of retail space is still owned by investment funds and by larger investment opportunity organisations who are not yet willing to accept that the market has changed. It's starting to happen, but it's slow. There needs to be a willingness from the actual owners to think about other ways to do this. Okay. Now, that's not something that anybody else can do. That has to come from inside the market. So there's a problem there. The third thing, which is where a group like us comes in, is that we can be going with local support, with community individuals who know the owners of some of these properties and say, look, Seas Cornwall and others are going to guarantee you a certain quality, a certain amount of activity, and that your property will be used to support people to create homes and invest and secure your own asset. So it's one of those things where working together, we won't get a huge difference. We require government change for that, but we can certainly make a difference. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Simon, for the comprehensive answer. And we are very fortunate that Henry is also can contribute, answer the question.
Thank you, Tamas. I just wanted to come in to say that I know there is some grant funding available currently in Cornwall that people, owners of high street properties who want to do conversions can apply to in order to enact them. And we're actually actively talking to the owner of a retail unit to try and get that converted into residential accommodation. So I think there are things happening on a piecemeal basis, and there is some funding. But like Simon says, I think we need some policy change to make the process a lot more straightforward.
Thank you, Henry. And do you think that the new government's focus on more affordable homes is a shift to the right direction and will provide more opportunities?
So it was really positive to see the amount of money being pledged to social housing in the spending review. And as an organisation, we would always support the careful consideration of new build properties. I think when you looked at some of the vital signs reports, and it showed that Cornwall has a 12% of its housing stock is social housing compared to a national average of 17%. I say new build is not the answer, it's part of the solution, but we desperately need to look at existing housing stock and coming at it from all angles. So yes, really welcome that, but there are other things that we need to do. I would also add that it's not just about bricks and mortar. I think the support services such as St Petrocs and other organisations that we offer are part of the solution as well, and that needs to go hand in hand with the increased housing capacity. So yeah, really welcome that news, and we look forward to the unlocking of opportunities within Cornwall.
Mm. Thank you very much, Henry, for highlighting that it is not just the new builds that won't be enough for a solution, but looking at the existing stock and repurposing properties. As we received another question, isn't this just a drop in the ocean, given the scale of what can be done? What in reality can be achieved with £3 million? So we are planning to raise this 3 million over 3 years. And I would like to make it clear, we are not planning to build houses such as buying brick and mortar from this money. We would like to unlock opportunities like Simon's organization at the beginning, at the planning stage, to provide that funding that they need to get off the ground and start the local development. There are many opportunities of these, and these amounts, some of the funding would go to support similar organizations like Simon and Cornwall Community Land Trust and local community land trust, and also the groups who help people in immediate crisis. Simon.
Thanks, Thomas. Just to come in on that one, the amount of money is crucial. The process of developing a model is very important. What's happened to us in Lou is that because we've taken the community with us, we've created a local we've helped create a local community land trust. The people of Lou have come together, and they are themselves now finding further opportunities, which we didn't know about. Nobody came to us. No one came to the council, but the people who live there know where the empty shops are, but they also know where the empty houses are, that Mr. So-and-so has left long since, and perhaps he'll talk to somebody. So the 3 million is a small amount of money against a huge problem, but it's amazing what things can be unlocked when you make a start and you make those first moves happen across all of the organisations that are represented here this evening. I think it's just really important that it's seed corn. It's not solution money, it's make it happen, start to happen money, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, Simon. Thank you. That's very helpful. Moving on to the next question, we received several questions about, is there a focus on supported housing for vulnerable young people?
Should I come in on that one,
Yes,
Thomas?
please.
I'm happy
Thank you,
to.
Henry.
So, Cornwall Council last year, for the first time, drafted a supported housing strategy, and that is in place. And that was really based on a statement of need. I'm really pleased that they took that step forward. So they've very clearly defined the types of supported housing that are required. And a key element of that is young people, especially those leaving the care system. I know that's a huge focus for homelessness prevention. And there are organisations dedicated to supporting care experienced young people not falling into homelessness when they turn 18 and leave the care system. I know of a number of different schemes that are being set up, targeted and focused on young people.
Thank you very much, Henry, for that insight, that information. Next question. There is a question about, have you been working with Cornwall Community Land Trust or any other community land trust doing brilliant things? Yes, we are very pleased that Cornwall Community Land Trust is one of the first organizations we started to give about 9 years ago, the first multi-year grant award, and during the last 9 years, every year we give them a grant of close to £10,000. Especially to support new developments through their planning stage at the beginning, where it is very difficult to attract any funding, any investments for the development. Often these are environmental surveys, planning, bat surveys, and we contributed several housing developments, one at Great Ruin and one in St. Ives. And very recently, last year, supported a new development on St. Mary's on the Isles of Scilly that is progressing and much needed, as we know that homes are unfortunately not affordable, and often key workers can't afford to live and work on the Isles of Scilly. So, is there any other questions? Just checking. Well, yes, there is another one. YMCA Cornwall is launching a campaign on Monday to build new 4 homes on their site in Penzance for vulnerable young people. Look for a press release and fundraising campaign. So thank you very much, Helen, for joining us. And it's great news that YMCA is actively helping vulnerable young people. And in Penzance, there will be new homes available. So we received another question, and this is about what is the funding landscape like for a lot of charities we work with. Sophie.
Yeah, I'm very happy to jump in on that one. So I've spent the last 10 years as a fundraiser, so I know very well the challenges that charities face. Often it's tied to the funding opportunities themselves. So it will be very restricted, prescriptive funding opportunities, and usually very short term. So the challenge with that is that you're really giving charities a really like a lack of flexibility through that funding. And simply put, if you're offering short-term restricted funding, generally speaking, you're going to get short-term restricted results. So in moving to that unrestricted funding model, that multi-year funding, it allows groups who are experts, like everyone we've got on the room with us today, to really make the decisions themselves. So it helps to level that playing field. It hands over that power to the people that are really on the ground doing the work to make decisions about how that funding is best spent, rather than restricting themselves to a load of tick boxes and funding criteria. So that freedom gives the opportunity not just to get on and do what they do best without having to fill in application forms, reporting again and again for these really short-term bursts of funding. It helps them to think long term and also gives a bit of breathing space for leadership to think in terms of capacity building. How could they continue to work with other organisations, collaborate, find new ways of thinking strategically how to tackle issues rather than being really stuck in the granular detail and the doing. So it moves from that reactive mode into that proactive mode.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sophie. We are keen to become more proactive, and that's why we have high aims to raise £3 million over the 3 years, and we can only do this with your help. So please support the important work that Jacqui, Simon, Henry are doing in Cornwall to help people in need. And I'm checking the questions, but we don't have any other questions, but we have a comment from one of the attendees. Thank you very much. Bravo to the charity sector, and thank you, Cornwall Community Foundation, for this important work. I'll thank you very much for the comment, and we can't support so many community groups all across Cornwall in the Isles of Scilly without the generous support from our donors. So it is an amazing work. Helping people in Cornwall, very rewarding. And once again, I would like to thank our speakers and everybody who joined this informative event this evening. Thank you for your time.
I was crying. I felt really upset and guilty that I was letting my little baby stay in a place like this. It makes you feel a bit of like a crap mum. You can't stay here, like it's unsafe for a child really. Me, my partner and my newborn child was living with my nan and granddad, and he had just had a heart attack, so they kind of wanted to rely and focus on his health instead of having to look after other people or, you know, have any stresses around them like a newborn baby and things. Cornwall Council have a homeless line, so I got hold of Cornwall Council and reported to them that I was going to be homeless. We had to send off some documents, like my nan and granddad had to speak to them and let them know, you know, we weren't just lying or anything. It was like all evidence and proof. But we weren't actually told where we were going to be put until the day that we actually became homeless. So I was living in Parr with my nan and granddad. And then when the day that we did become homeless, we were moved to Roach Travelodge. I took my son to it wasn't a midwife appointment, we took him to Bodmin Midwives to go and get weighed. And I can't remember what started the conversation, but we really got into chatting. And I think I ended up crying and sort of offloading to the midwife about everything that we'd been going through leading up to this moment. And she actually put us forward to Wadebridge Foodbank to help us out. I met with the lovely Victoria, and so yeah, obviously we went there and they gave us what you'd call a kettle box to help support us whilst we were living in the Travelodge because we weren't able to cook. But she also took all of our information and was basically, you know, you can't be living in a Travelodge, the three of you at the moment, and so far away from where your partner works. And she just took all of our information and said, leave it with me, we're going to try and get you some help. So Roach Travelodge was the only Travelodge that we were put into, but we were put there on 2 different occasions and we were moved around a little bit in between that. So we went from Roach Travelodge the day that we became homeless and had to leave my nan and granddad's to a flat in Bodmin, which was awful. When we arrived there was blood all up the walls, everywhere in our apartment. I think every single wall that was actually in that apartment. It was like a studio, so it was one room with a bathroom, but there was drug paraphernalia in the ceiling, which obviously would have been extremely dangerous if my 3-month-old son had crawled across the floor and come across it. Yeah, really horrible place. The landlord made us feel really on edge and uncomfortable, and yeah, it was just horrible there. So we, I think my partner ended up ringing my mother-in-law because I was crying. I felt really upset and guilty that I was letting my my little baby stay in a place like this. It makes you feel a bit of like a crap mum, really. So yeah, he rang my mother-in-law and she came down and was like, you can't stay here, like it's unsafe for a child, really. And we rang council and got permission to stay hers for the weekend until they could sort something else out for us. And then on Monday, the following Monday, obviously after the weekend, we stayed at her house. We then got moved to St Austell. We were told we'd go down there at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We got there, like got everything packed up, ran all our stuff down at about 5 o'clock. We got in the flat, got our stuff in the flat. It was lovely. I remember like FaceTiming my mum and showing her around, and I was like finally, we're gonna be happy here for at least a while. And then I got a text through saying, actually, you can't stay here. The fire safety checks hadn't been done. So we then had to pack back up and leave, or grab our stuff and leave again. We were told that we could go to Liskeard that evening and move into a flat out there, which was in the middle of absolutely nowhere, and we don't have anybody around us near Liskeard, and again, we don't drive. And my mother-in-law was just getting extremely frustrated at this point, so she took the phone from me and she just said, look, can they stay at ours again tonight, and like we'll sort it tomorrow, because it's 5-6 o'clock in the evening by this point. We were lugging a baby round with all our bags. It was just a nightmare. So we ended up going back to her house, and the next day we got put back to Roach Travelodge again. I think we were there for another couple of weeks before we finally got this place. No, this is temporary accommodation as well.
Oh.
I feel like this is more stable accommodation. It is an actual flat that we don't have to share with anyone, and it feels safe. We're happy here, if you know what I mean, or as happy as we can be. But this is temporary as well. This is until we can find somewhere permanent.